But there was this misperception that like, oh, if you start Book to start the fourth, everything's going to be fine. Not necessarily, but it's going to take some time, and I think it's worth trying because we've seen what doesn't work to this point, and it'd be better to switch things up than to keep bashing your head on the same ceiling.
We talked briefly about the fourth quarter at the top of the show, but let's dive into it a little bit more. One of the biggest things from tonight was that Book started the fourth quarter out there on the court for the Suns. KD sat out. What did you think about that adjustment? Do you feel like that's something they should continue to experiment with?
It's worth a look at this point, I think. Like, obviously, I think they went on a 4-2 run to start, and then the Nets went on like an 8-0 run after that. So it didn't fully fix the problem. But again, this was one of the first times we've seen that configuration out there. So I'm big on the reps. I'm big on getting familiarity in that way. I think that's part of what we saw. But they were able to, like I said, right the ship after that and keep it in double figures for the rest of the way. And that's the encouraging thing to me. So, no, it doesn't fix everything right off the bat. We didn't mean to start this perception, but there was this misperception that like, oh, if you start Book to start the fourth, everything's going to be fine. Not necessarily, but it's going to take some time, and I think it's worth trying because we've seen what doesn't work to this point, and it'd be better to switch things up than to keep bashing your head on the same ceiling.
Well, I think it goes back to the psychological point that we've been talking about for quite some time. I think it's gotten into their heads. And I think today was a step in the right direction by kind of switching things up a little bit. You know what? There's a pattern that's, Book goes out and we start to kind of lose our way a little bit. So you know what? Now we're going to come in tonight and let Book start the fourth. And although statistically it didn't look as good as maybe we would want it to, we don't know how it affected the team psychologically. I mean, they only lost the third quarter by 3 points. I question how many of those did we even lose that quarter because we went to the bench and it was garbage minutes and stuff like that. So I like it. I think they needed a psychological shift, and they got that. And so now we see if it continues or do we go back.
I think you keep doing it unless you get a backup point guard at the deadline.
Yeah.
If you have a primary ball handler in that bench, I think you may turn to that individual to start the fourth with Beal, with KD, and keep Book in more of a rhythm that he's familiar with. But if you don't get that, I think you got to stay this way. And just to comment, mentally, like you're talking about, any change kind of helps break you out of that, right? And you kind of hope that this starts a pattern for this group where, okay, Book's out there, we won this one, there wasn't problems, happens again, then all of a sudden you get out of that mental funk even all of us, like, outside of Flex, we all know Flex doesn't look at the fourth that way, but a lot of us, you go, oh no, again, not again, and there was a moment of that here. It corrected itself quickly, but so I think they'll keep with that unless they get somebody that can be that ball handler.